Everyone, I'm just going to start off a little bit with some introductions. My name is Heidi Swank. I am the Executive Director of Rethos. We are the Minnesota's statewide historic preservation nonprofit. We don't work just in Minnesota, though. We work across 7 states and counting. But all of our staff are here in Minnesota. This is where we got our start 40 years ago. 40 years ago, after the math. I'm an anthropologist, not a mathematician. So I moved here in January 2021 to take over Rethos as the new executive director. I moved from Las Vegas, Nevada, where I founded Nevada's statewide historic preservation nonprofit. And I'm telling you that because I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that I did in Las Vegas. We thought that it would be a good idea to talk about an example that is not in Minnesota in this context to give everyone a chance to really have conversations. So you'll be hearing a lot about the west side of Las Vegas, which if you have never been there, when you've been to Las Vegas, you should definitely go and see me about what there is to see there and the important history there is to learn there. So with that, I'm going to pass things off to my partner, Tish, and she will do her introduction.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Tish Jones. I'm a poet. I'm also the founder and executive director of TruArtSpeaks. We're an arts and culture organization based in St. Paul. And Black Endeavors, Tish Jones LLC, CEO, and our work at those entities involves education, facilitation, cultural production, professional development stuff for educators and community organizers. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to partner with Heidi. And before we move forward, it's really, really important as part of this process. What we're going to be working on today is introducing a tool and methodology for having critical conversation, strategic planning, et cetera, et cetera. It's called open space technology. Some people are probably maybe familiar with it. Have you heard of it? Open space technology? Anybody? Oh, this is going to be so fun. That's great. Okay, cool. So before we get into the actual tool, can I ask whoever is running sound to maybe tweak the feedback just a bit? And I would love to know who you are. And so that'll give them time to fix this thing. So if you could just say your names and who you represent in this space. That's open for interpretation. But just to get your names in the room, that's also a part of open space, right? So I'm gonna start here, and we're gonna go really quickly. Your name and whoever you represent in this space.
Beth Becker, St. Cloud, HPC.
Awesome.
Chuksubuchu, St. Cloud, HPC, also a professor of architecture.
Nice. Boom.
Justin Morton, Nick, Beverly, Minnesota, HBC.
Brad Kirshner over at the HBC.
Leanne Lincoln, City of Farmington, HBC.
Awesome. Way in the back.
Connor Jay from the City of Asheville Planning Department.
Awesome.
Chris, Ottertail County Historical Society. I'm Scott with the Winona History Center and the Historic Preservation Commission.
Carrie with the Winona County Historical Society.
Boom. Thank you.
Here at DPC, Winona.
Mary Casey, Minneapolis.
Thank you. I know you thought you were out of it.
I'm John Fisher from Chicago. I'm the Grants and Communications Manager.
Thank you.
Crystal Thomas, City Council, Henderson.
Pauline Marlinsky, Gaylord, HPC.
Mike Lagerquist, Mankato, HBC.
Davina Lemon, Historic Architect,
Okay.
Steve City of
Ruth Resnick, HPC.
Thank you.
Autumn, Dakota County Press. Barb Evans, Northfield, HPC.
Nice voice, Barb.
Ken Shuey, Redmond, HPC.
Katie Old Frontneck, HBC, and I'm a Farmington social studies history teacher, so I also am here with that.
Awesome. I love your voices at that table.
Andrea Burke, Minneapolis, deepen.
Kevin Stein from the City of Excelsior.
Jerry Anderson, HBC, Taylor's Falls.
Thank you.
Katie Himanga, City of Lake City, HPC.
Addison Galligan, Mankato resident and previous Cecilia Damage, Inuit Historical Society.
Carolyn Sunquist, Duluth Historic Armory Project.
Stephanie, retired educator.
Bob O'Neill, Center City, HDC.
Kat Pilgrim, Minnesota Historical Society, Capital Planning.
Megan, Minnesota Historical Society.
Joe Hoover, Minnesota Historical Society.
Your name and who you represent in the space.
Cheryl Capone, good morning,
Matt Houston, Stillwater HPC.
Ben, can you connect us to a lot of community development?
Awesome.
Laurel March, I guess I call myself a citizen activist. I'm from Biwabic on the Iron Range, and there are a lot of great buildings there that need to be saved.
Awesome. That was great. Give yourselves a round of applause. You did that really, really quickly. Nice to meet you all. I'm going to grab this little clicker thing to move us through this technology. So, open space technology is really about, it's a tool, it's a protocol to help folks move through conversation. It is a self-organizing tool. So really, the goal is you should walk out of this space feeling like you have another tool in your toolbox to help you when you're doing strategic planning, when you're talking to stakeholders, if you have a diverse group of people who are trying to attack one subject. That's what this time is for. Does that make sense? It is designed to create space for meaningful engagement, right? So the last session was about rethinking I-94. Is that correct? In this room? Okay, so let's just use that as an example. We're talking about rethinking I-94. That's the thing. There are 100 people in a room, say 50 just so it's not so intimidating. There are 50 people in the room and everybody has an idea. Open space could be utilized to hear all of those ideas, to see which ideas are the most exciting amongst the body, right? And who wants to drive those ideas forward, and also just to lift up all 50 voices. Because sometimes, as we know, there are the folks who are really outspoken, who say a lot, who raise their hand a ton, are really passionate, and there are those of us who are maybe not public speakers and not as excited to share our voice in a room, but may have, you know, the freshest idea in the space, right? The most innovative idea in the space. What this technology does is it allows all of those ideas to bubble to the surface. It allows everyone to learn about those ideas and self-organize around taking action to drive those ideas and or projects, etc. forward. Does that make sense? Cool. Went the wrong direction. Sorry about that. When would we use it? I'm going really quickly so that you can get to it. We have an hour and 15 minutes. So if I go too fast, let me know. If you have a question while I'm speaking, let me know. Anyway, you would use it if you, like I said, have varied opinions amongst a large body, if you want input from others to help advance an idea, if you have a situation where there's seemingly a little bit of conflict, it can be useful. And if you're mapping the future of a project, like that I-94 thing we thought about, but also collaboration. Because part of the thing that happens in open space technology is you end up breaking off into groups. You're gonna do group work today. You end up breaking off into groups, working with people that you may not have otherwise worked with to advance the idea, to expound upon the idea, and in the long-term sense of the goal planning, to actually put action towards the project. Does that make sense? Cool. The font is really small. I apologize. If you have a smartphone, take a picture and zoom in. If you really want to, you know. This is the strategy part. This is like the step-by-step breakdown. So I actually do advise you to take a picture and zoom in. Especially if after you go through the process, you're like, wow, I really like that process. It's also written in a super heady way where it's like, everything is possible. So that's why there's so much text. It could go this way or that way. Anyway, here's how it works. We do this. We convene as a large body. The idea and or topic is revisited, say, rethinking I-94. or Las Vegas. We're gonna do it, go through it. The next step is we invite your ideas into the room, right? So what are your ideas? Let's say, rethinking I-94. What do you want to see? This is when the idea is first introduced. What do you want to see in rethinking I-94? All 75 of you. And there's some people who feel really passionate. You should have Post-it notes at your table. So and if you don't, because there was a lot of moving around, that's my fault, I'll bring more. But what you'll do then is if you have ideas, you'll write your ideas down on this piece of paper, on this Post-it note. And every idea is a correct idea. There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's in this moment in the process. I like to take my finger and poke out the peanut butter. I don't like chocolate really, but I do like chocolate and peanut butter. So anyway, you write your ideas down on this piece of paper, and we'll create what I like to call a mosaic of ideas. After all of the ideas are generated, we're just going to stick them up there on that little glossy area so that we can see what comes up. Which means you don't have to hold super tight to your idea. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Because what happens after we generate all of these ideas is we share them with the large body. You might hear something that is even more exciting and more stimulating and more interesting than what you shared. And you might say, oh man, I want to work on that, right? So the ideas are generated, and then the next step is sharing all of the ideas back to the larger group. And then we invite you all, this is where the self-organizing happens, we invite you all to take responsibility for one idea in the space. Right, so you've heard something and you're really inspired by it. It could be the idea that you offered. It could be someone else's idea. These are now collective ideas. We're a collective, we're a group, we're a collaborative, right? So it could be that. You're like, I'm gonna take the idea that is filling in the expressway with soil and making it walkable. That is, I'm going to facilitate the conversation around that section. And if you decide to do that, we're in this next step, you will take that idea, find a space in the room, maybe a new table. Let's say that back table, there's no one over there. This is the filling in the freeway with soil table. And tell me your name again. Connor is leading that charge. So Connor is back here with the filling in the freeway with soil, and anyone who is interested in working on that idea with Connor is going to head back to this table. Connor is going to help facilitate the conversation. Connor is not driving, leading, it's not ownership of the idea, but Connor is going to help ask questions to generate provocative thought and ideas. That's how that works, right? That's going to happen for as many of the ideas as folks feel passionate or as there are folks in the room. If there are ideas left in the front, that's fine, they stay there. We get to those. What happens next in open space technology, which is really important, is that in Connor's group, right, and all of the respective groups, there will be a note taker. Again, self-identified note taker. You write down what happens in the group. Write down what's said. There are large post-it notes, posted like the sticky, put it on the wall kind of thing. Those are where the recorder or note taker is going to write down what happens. So questions like, where are we going to get all that soil? Those questions are going to go on Connor's big white paper, right? And at the end of this thing, all of the ideas that we didn't get to, they will be shared out. Your facilitator, me, I will be responsible for sending those things back to you. I will be responsible for taking the notes from Connor's group, from Michael's group, from Celia's group, typing all those things up and sending them back to you. So the whole process is documented. And everyone is abreast of what happens in the separate spaces, right? So that's me skipping through a ton of the steps. That's actually quite literally all of the steps. So after everyone has these separate conversations and these ideas, we convene as a group and we debrief the process, right? That is open space technology. We're going to go through it. There are a couple other things that I really want to note before I kick it off to my partner in this project, Heidi. These things are really important. The amount of time that you have. If you took a photo of the step-by-step, you'll see there are things like, in some open space technology situations, you might not actually have the time or the space to experience the technology in real time. It might be a situation where you're in a corporate office or a foundation or nonprofit, and you have to schedule the time at a later date, right? So what you would do in those scenarios is folks would sign up. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Carolyn's office, and we're gonna meet in Carolyn's boardroom on September 30th from 3 to 5, and that's when we're gonna have our conversation about our big idea, right? So the facilitation of it changes from time to time. So always be mindful of your time. That's really important. It'll help right-size your expectations. The law of 2 feet is really important. This is critical. You might think that you like Connor's idea about, filling the thing with soil, and you're there and you're like, I am not contributing to this space. Use your 2 feet. Go to the next great idea and be additive in that space. Does that make sense? And sometimes we get stuck in the thing. We're like, oh no, this is where I said I was going to be, and you're not adding anything. You're not inspired. So use your 2 feet. The law of 2 feet is critical. I mentioned that everything is documented already. We covered that. Like ideas should be merged. So as a facilitator of this technology, it is also your job to be an active listener so that, if someone else said, we can make a park, we really need to merge the park with Connor's idea for soil, right? So just being mindful. And the last thing is that this is really fun. Everyone who is in the room is supposed to be in the room. I think there are concurrent workshops happening right now, so, we're the right body for this activity. Does that make sense? Yeah? Questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Quick one. If I'm understanding this right, the facilitator can have a discussion separate day and time. This is not like have a block on time and then all this have to happen. And then you reconvene to share the different ideas.
That is one application. Yes. So the question was, can this happen all in one time, so all in this hour and 15 minutes that we have together, or can this happen at different times over a period of days? Both and. That's both and. So if you have 90 minutes to make it happen, this is a great tool to get a bunch of ideas out, a bunch of voices heard in the room, and see what's exciting to the people you're working with. Use that 90 minutes and use this tool, yeah? Yep.
Then if it happens over a few days, how do you reconvene everybody to share?
So the real answer to that question is I can't help you answer that question. I can't answer the how you would reconvene your crew. What I can say is when it happens over multiple days, the idea is, again, Celia is going to convene her big idea on September 30th from 3 to 5. Connor is doing his idea September 29th from 1 to 4. Those things happen and you decide on October 6th, everyone needs to send all of the notes back to you as the facilitator. You're going to type all of them up. And then on October 15th, everyone reconvenes once more. They've read the report that you've shared out, and you make the decisions on how you're going to move forward as a body, whatever your determining practice is. Does that make sense?
Your 2 feet rule on top of that. What happens if Connor's table turns into a table of 1 again?
Perfect. That's perfect. I love that you mentioned that, actually. That's a really good point. Because the other thing is like if you're really passionate about an idea and you're the only person in your group doing your idea, do it. Give yourself the time and the space to ideate, right? And present back to other folks like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. You should totally do that. And if you spend 20 minutes and you're like, I've exhausted all ideas, leave your group and go somewhere else. Right? There's literally no wrong way to be in this protocol. Great question. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi now, who's going to ground us in sort of a shared experience and then we're going to get into the actual practice of the technology. Thank you for listening. Oh, there we go.
All right, so just to start off, how many people have been to Las Vegas? Raise your hand if you've been to Las Vegas. I feel like most of the world has been to Las Vegas. How many of you have been to the historic West Side? Oh, great. Oh, that's fabulous. Excellent. So there's 2 people who have been to the historic West Side. I'm going to give you a little bit of a history about the historic West Side of Las Vegas. And I will also ask that the next time you're in Las Vegas, please rent a car and please go take a look, or get an Uber to take you around, but please go take a look at the historic West Side. This is a piece of Las Vegas history that people just really don't know about, and there are a lot of people in Las Vegas who've been working really hard to scream this history from the rooftops, and we all have not made a ton of traction. It's getting better in Las Vegas, but not across the country. And since it's such a famous city, I feel like this part of the history really needs to be told. Okay, so the historic West Side has, for most of its history, been primarily an African-American neighborhood. It's really seen continual disinvestment for its 100-year history, and if you think that the entire history of Las Vegas is 100 years, that means since the beginning, the historic West Side has seen continual disinvestment. But today, it has this amazing sense of community and solidarity. Everybody who lives there knows each other. There's a lot of ways in which people work together a lot to try to make life better on the West Side. I'm just going to provide a brief history of the historic West Side, and this is really a way for all of us just to step out of Minnesota for a minute and take those hats that you've brought with you today and think about how would you, with that hat, or another hat if there's one that seems better at the time, how would you interact in this situation, and what would make you passionate enough to say, I'm taking a Post-it and I'm heading over there because I think this is a great idea on what we could do in the historic West Side. So I'll start off with a little bit of Las Vegas history. So Las Vegas was originally 2 townships. It was the McWilliams Township and the Clark Township. And I'm sorry, this is way small font. I didn't realize it would be so far up there, so I will read as much as I can to get it into your heads. Okay, so if you look, is there a pointer on this little thing?
Yeah.
Let's see, where am I finding my pointer? Okay, well, I'll just motion. So the McWilliams Township is this part up in the upper left. So you see that diagonal line there? That's the railroad. The railroad is really what started Las Vegas and what really determined a lot of how the city is oriented. If you look at the Las Vegas Strip, you'll notice that the strip does not go north-south. It follows the railroad line. So this railroad is super important to the history of Las Vegas. And the grid in the upper left, this is the McWilliams Township. J.T. McWilliams was a surveyor, and he realized that there was a lot of things that were going to be happening soon in Las Vegas, and he wanted to be part of it. So you say he took all of his money and he invested, and he bought all of that land on the west side of the railroad. Not too much longer, in 1902, Senator William Clark, who employed J.T. McWilliams, he's the one who owned the railroad, purchased the land east of the railroad. So this is the part that you see down by the Las Vegas sign, down there. This is the Clark Township. But at the same time, he did something that McWilliams didn't. This is somebody who had a lot of resources. He was a senator. He also owned the railroad. He had a lot of resources. He was a savvy businessman. And he created the Las Vegas Land and Water Company. And if you know anything about Las Vegas, you know water determines so many things in that entire state. So he refused to supply water to the McWilliamstown site. He wanted to dry them out and make sure that they did not succeed. He also did something that McWilliams didn't, which is he oriented the street grid to the railroad, which meant that there were a lot more parcels that fronted on the railroad, which made them a lot more valuable. And it meant that there were more businesses that wanted to front on the railroad because people would come off the train and you wouldn't see just a corner of the community, you'd see this whole street that would draw you in, right? So it was a smart move. And Clark Township won the battle to be the primary site for the city of Las Vegas. So, you see what's going on with my computer. So Las Vegas is in Clark County for the reasons that we know that the Clark Township won out. Okay. Let me see if the dongle just got. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief history, kind of fast forwarding from the early 20th century, going ahead about 30 years. So in the 1930s, the gambling was legalized in Nevada. And this was when really things started to boom. There was an African-American community there, but it was really small. And white Las Vegans were really working toward maintaining segregation. When the African-American community was super small, there wasn't that pressure and that idea that they needed to separate as much, but as the African-American community grew in Las Vegas, so did these practices. I always think it's an interesting thing to look at who was hired at the Boulder Dam, or now called the Hoover Dam, but then it was called the Boulder Dam. They hired only 44 African-American workers. That was it. And it was only after there was some significant push from the NAACP and then they hired anybody. So there was also a mayor there named Ernie Cregan, who in the 30s and 40s forcibly relocated all African-Americans into the historic West Side. So this J.T. McWilliams Township site that still had no water and had no housing or electricity. There was a policy that the city of Las Vegas had that they would not renew business licenses of African-American business owners unless they relocated to the historic West Side. So within just a decade, African-Americans were concentrated solely in the West Side of Las Vegas. In the 1940s, we saw what's called the Great Migration of African-Americans to Las Vegas. So just to tell you, point out how massive this migration was. In 1943, there were 178 African Americans in Las Vegas. A year later, there were over 3,000. A lot of this was for the basic magnesium plant in Henderson, Nevada, but also there was a lot of work on the Las Vegas Strip in the back of house for African Americans. A lot of folks came from Mississippi and Alabama. So now the historic West Side becomes really a growing community of tents and shanties, and that's this kind of faded picture behind you. This is a photo of Las Vegas, the West Side of Las Vegas in the 1940s. A pivotal part of Las Vegas history happened in the winter of 1944 to 1945. This is when the city of Las Vegas came in and demolished and burned about 375 homes in the historic West Side. Many of these lots remain empty today. But it's not clear, sorry, I'm not sure what's on my computer. It's coming back up, okay. So many of these lots remain empty today. It's not clear, we can't quite trace which lots date to the 1944, 1945 demolition and burning, but we know that a good number of these lots are still empty, and these really are historic sites in their own right. In the 1950s, we now have 15,000 African Americans living in the historic West Side. It's not a very big neighborhood. There's still no water, sewer, or paved streets. There is the historic West Side School, so for those of you who've been to the West Side, you've probably been to the school. And that is a place where everyone used to gather. It was the place that always had electricity, always had water. In 1953, there was public housing that was built called Marble Manor that I believe still exists today, but is soon to be demolished in favor of high-rises. And then in 1955, the NAACP came in and they ensured that a neighborhood called Berkeley Square was built. This was the first housing that was built in the historic West Side for middle-class African-American families. And the architect that designed them was Paul R. Williams, which you may know is the first African-American architect who became a member of the AIA. And then in 1960, the city mostly desegregated. There was a lot of pressure on the Las Vegas Strip to desegregate. I'm sure everyone hears the stories of African-American entertainers like Sammy Davis Jr. not being able to enter in the front door, having to go into the kitchen. This was a big push to desegregate the Strip in the city. And then in 1971, there was a consent decree that came down that further desegregated the city, and this was when African Americans were finally allowed to move outside of the historic West Side, and businesses also, and a lot of people left at that point. Next slide. So there were 15,000 African Americans living in the historic West Side, and during this period, during segregation, because it was such a captive market, it was a bustling neighborhood. There were a ton of stores, there were music halls, there were casinos, there were beauty shops, there were grocery stores, schools. The Jackson Street Strip, it's today on street signs just says Jackson Avenue, but everybody calls it the Jackson Street Strip. It was a commercial heart of the community. And there were numerous churches that sprung up. It's had a very high concentration of churches, that many of which still exist today. Change slides. So since the 1971 consent decree, like I said, in the 1970s, anyone who could move out of the West Side did. There were so few services that people who had means wanted to move someplace with more services. Homes were abandoned, burned, and became more empty parcels. So if you look at this picture in the lower right, that's the historic West Side. And I think everyone, even though it's a somewhat small picture, you can tell that there are a lot of empty parcels in the historic West Side. The Jackson Street Strip lost also many of its buildings, although today it is part of the Nevada Main Street program with Main Street America, which is pretty good. Churches are full every Sunday still. To this day, that is where lots of people go to church. One of the side issues with that is that a lot of the churches purchased other parcels and put down parking lots without any trees or any shade or anything, and so it kind of increases that heat sink in the middle of the city. But the community remains really well connected. It's still predominantly African American, though it has many Hispanic and white residents. In 2015, the city of Las Vegas invested $15 million in the restoration of the historic West Side School and brought that back, and is now an office space for a lot of African American businesses, as well as my nonprofit that I started. And there's a coalition currently led by Councilmember Cedric Career looking to revitalize the community, and this is Councilmember Career in that photo. Next slide. So the challenges that today that are still there for the historic West Side is what I call the Las Vegas effect. Super common. Folks come in and they think that they are going to buy a bunch of parcels and neglect the houses, and then they're going to wait for that casino to come buy them out. Everybody thinks the casino is going to take over their house and give them $1 million. Or they attempt to assemble parcels to demolish them and build their own casino. So there is this idea that there's just around the corner, there's this big cash in you're going to get, and so you just hold on to whatever you have and see what happens. But also there's another aspect where of ownership here. Because remember, during segregation, this was the only place African American families could buy land and own a home. So a lot of these areas were purchased during segregation, and they have occupied homes or they're empty lots, but they're really important to the families because it was the only place they were allowed to buy homes. Nevada's tax structure. Nevada has no income tax, very little business tax. It has one of the worst ratios of state employees to residents in the country. There are few services and fewer programs. There's no state historic tax credit to come rescue. There just are very little programs to help people out. And there are so many empty parcels, and that some of these are historic and date back to the 1944 and 1945 burning of these homes. So this is kind of the issue that we would like you to kind of think about and step into. And with that, I will pass things back to Tish.
Sorry, I'm just turning my microphone back on. Thank you, Heidi, for that presentation and that context. So I'm leaving this slide up because this is the challenge. So we are going to go into this idea of open space technology with these challenges in mind. And we're looking to you all to give us the next great idea to shift culture and impact positive change and social transformation in Las Vegas, Nevada. With all of the history and the context that you were just provided, with all of your expertise in this room, what do we do with today's challenges? What are your grand ideas? So first things first is you all, most of you, and if you don't have Post-it notes on your table, let me know. But most of you should have Post-it notes on your on your table. The first thing is, write down your idea. Let's take 3 minutes to generate ideas. If you don't have an idea, that's okay. I want you to challenge yourself to come up with an idea. We have 2 to 3 minutes, starting now, to generate an idea of how to address these challenges. One idea per person. One idea per person. This is not a group activity at this juncture. I know it's easier for it to be a group activity. This is an individual activity. What is your individual idea on how to address these challenges? Your individual idea. You have 2.5 minutes left. There is electricity there now. There is water there now. Yes, you need to use it. No, this is not totally used. These are not easy. Great. Now you have 2 minutes.
What is their state's financial? Do they have it?
The state revenue comes from gaming, gold mining, and sales tax.
Meaning there is money. So if you're thinking about your idea and it has to do with, there is money. There is money. It can be resourced. So do not limit your idea based on the idea of lack of resources. You have 60 seconds left. And in these 60 seconds, I'm going to give you another instruction. Because some of you have your idea written down already, you now have an invitation to place your idea here, below the border here. So you have 30 seconds to write your idea down, and then we'll give everyone 2.5 minutes to stick it to the wall. Take your idea and stick it to the wall.
Not really very concise.
Great, let's take another 90 or so seconds to finish this idea generating and this mosaic of Post-it notes. It is, right? All right, you have 30 seconds left. 30 seconds. All right, our 30 seconds are up, and I'm going to ask that we transition into the next aspect of this activity for the sake of our time together. I'm going to come stand next to Laurel because sometimes that's how we have to do things when we're trying to pivot the attention to the next part of the activity. All right, Laurel. Here's what we're gonna do. The next step is we're gonna view the mosaic, all of us. We are going to leave our seats, go take a look at these ideas, take some time to read them. Here's the key instruction. If you see an idea that you are really moved by, I want you to grab that sticky note, post-it note. Take one of these and go find an empty table. Yeah? Because you are going to start the process of facilitating a conversation to move that idea forward. Yes?
If you are like the second person who likes that idea, do you just go join that person at their table?
Not yet. So if you see someone take your idea, just go back to your seat. If you're like, I know I want to work on that idea, just go back to your actual seat. So this first step is view the ideas. If someone takes your idea that you're super passionate about, don't worry about it. You'll get an opportunity to relocate yourself and go work on that idea.
But if they've taken it before I could see it, how do I know?
You'll get an opportunity. Yep. I love this question. So remember that step process. What we're going to do first is identify the facilitators, right? Second, everyone is going to hear who is facilitating what and in what space. So you will have the opportunity to self-organize into, and this is only happening this way because of the time we have, right? Because of this small amount of time that we have, which is under 30 minutes, we have to make this part happen in an efficient manner. So the steps are this. You're going to go take a look at what you see. If you are inspired, you are going to grab a Post-it note, grab a big white Post-it paper, find an empty table, hang out. Once people are done viewing the mosaic, once folks have their Post-it notes and their white papers, we are then going to have the facilitators announce what their idea is, and you will then self-organize. If you are inspired by that idea and you want to go work at that table, you will do so. Then we'll have a concentrated amount of time for you to dream in groups. There will be a note taker. You will vision, you will solve the problems of the Las Vegas effect. Yeah? And when you're done solving the problems of the Las Vegas effect, we'll reconvene as a large body. Does that make sense? Okay, so first things first, let's get out of these seats. Let's go check out the mosaic. I'm going to ask you to take no more than 3 minutes to view this mosaic and make a decision to be a leader. Your 3 minutes starts now. Thank you.
The question I want to ask was that, so is this, so you're saying it's technology, or so is this normally like an online type of, right? I mean, where everyone can be sort of the groups and online? Sure. Yeah. I haven't, but. Yeah, you're right, yeah. I was just thinking that's what this was, that you have a, you know, a program that would do this, that. Sure, yeah, okay.
I got to ask you, are you involved with the Shannon program at all? Okay. We just kind of doing some of that stuff, but that's okay.
All right, you have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes left. We're looking for leaders to take Post-it notes and solve today's challenges in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Is it difficult to read the writing?
Yeah, very good.
I think we have one leader. Excuse me.
I always start to collaborate, which is great. But you were so good getting them to getting us to do.
We have a second leader.
For us to invest in his dream.
That's okay. That's okay.
So our leaders are now going to an empty table so that you all can self-organize on the ideas that you would like to advance.
That's right.
All right, we have a third conversation happening. I love it. Oh, here comes a fourth. Yes.
What if I think it's similar to the one that I wrote down?
Then I'll get to hear it.
That's all I got. Sorry. We're a nonprofit. There you go.
All right, take another 90 seconds to view the mosaic and lead into your leadership capabilities. I believe in each of you. Oh, we have a fifth leader. Yes.
I like this. I'm going to follow that.
I love that. Thank you. We've got about 45 seconds left for our mosaic people, and then I'm going to ask you to return to your seats. Oh, we've got another leader. All right, perfect. I'm going to ask my art gallery folks to transition back to your seats. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for participating in this exercise to this point. We have a few table leaders. Unless someone gets really inspired in their last set of looks. So as the viewers of the gallery are returning to their seats, I'm going to ask my table facilitators to stand up. I'm going to ask Heidi to take the microphone around to these facilitators. And if you're a table leader, please stand up because Heidi's going to come around and allow you to say your idea. So as listeners, please be listening to the one idea that you are interested initially in being a part of that conversation.
The idea I chose is Avenue of the Guillotines, Jackson Street Art Project, a social commentary. I'm interpreting this as public art.
Nice, thank you. That's idea number one. And I like that synthesis, public art.
Okay.
This idea was tax the casinos, get that money, and then build homes on the empty lots, a housing redevelopment project.
Synthesizing that as get that money and build housing. Yes.
I chose heritage tourism not based on the strip concept. So, I mean, a lot of people go to Las Vegas and are bored, myself included, because I'm not a huge gambler and I usually just walk around the hotels and look at the architecture. I think something like this, if anybody's ever been to South Africa, there's a really beautiful museum called District 6 where something very similar happened, where there was an entire community that was, you know, razed to the ground basically and moved out of the city. And I think modeling a heritage site there, and maybe if you can stop the destruction of that. Did you say it was the school?
The school's good.
The school's good, Marble Manor.
Yes.
If we need to get an emergency federal cultural, I don't know what you would do, but let's get them and then make them stop doing that and not do the high rise.
Yeah.
Create a museum centered around here and create an arts and cultural tourist not attraction, that's the wrong word, but a destination.
Perfect.
Heritage destination.
Love that. So we have public art, get the money, build some houses, and a heritage tour. Love that.
And this one is create a land trust to invest in and green up the west side as the lungs of Las Vegas.
Nice. Land trust and lungs. Fresh life. Over here, back one. Thank you.
The one that I grabbed, because I was green and I could read it, is Parks with Organic Farmer.
Parks with Organic Farming. I love that. I love that. There's a little nuance because of the land trust idea in this one, right? But in this Parks and Organic Farming, and that can be an entire industry, right? So like, also like generating food, bringing food back to folks. Whereas this is like, how do we plant trees and give life, and also think about this land trust and housing thing. So love that. Here we go.
We have asked the community what they want to see happen.
Yeah. Yep. Boom. So that's it. That's like, you know, the precursor to all of this, right? Is like,
first step.
Yeah. The first step is like, how do we have conversations with Las Vegas residents? Yeah. So these are our ideas. And now you have about 15 minutes to self-organize. Go to the group in which you feel most inspired. You're going to spend 15 minutes in that group, or you're going to use the law of 2 feet and go to another space. But we're going to get some ideas down. A couple things to note before you move. The facilitator of the conversation does not automatically have to be the note taker. If you would like to be supportive and helpful, once you get to the space, you can offer to be that person. Yeah? That's it. 2 feet, be helpful, 15 minutes. Let's do it. Also, I'm gonna cut the time down. We're not gonna spend 15 minutes, we're gonna spend 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Your time starts now.
driving away, so it's not weird.
It has been really beautiful listening to your conversations. You have 30 seconds. So whatever final idea that you have, try to write it down, try to wrap it up. You have 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Close up this last idea. All right, good people. That is your time. I know how hard it is to end. My good friends who are deep in solving Las Vegas's problems. This is always the thing. I am, and I should have taught you to call and response before I sent you off. That's my fault. All right, good people. You don't have to move. Actually, it's easier if you stay where you are. Just stay where you are and listen to my voice. Here is the next set of questions. What I would love, what would happen now, and unfortunately we just don't have a lot of time. We have 10 minutes. And what's most important is that we actually talk about this process. So I'm going to tell you what would happen if we had more than 10 minutes. If we had more than 10 minutes, I would ask each note taker to share out with the larger group what they came up with, right? So that would be step one. As that happened, what we would do, if we had more time, is, so let's say tell me what was your group again? Art, public art. So the public art group, they're sharing. We spend 10 minutes as a large body putting action steps after they share what they have out. Yep, then we go to get the money, build some houses, same thing. They share everything that they wrote down, we put some action steps to those things. Here's what I remember about this group. I remember this group was asking questions about how do we get the community, you're not, I value everything that you shared. I value everything you have, but I remember this question. So anyway, you all had some questions about how do we get the churches to open up? And those are really good questions to spring us forward into those action steps. And actually what then happens in the group, because you're a part of the same company, organization, institution, whatever, people start to take responsibility for taking those action steps. So when we say things like, how do we get the churches? Do we even know if the churches want, people who are outside of their congregation to come into the church to be a part of a community conversation? Let's say, making up a name, David says, I'm a member of that congregation. I will talk to the senior pastor and I will ask if they're able to. And David doesn't even have to be a member. David can just be, really outgoing and say, hey, I will take responsibility for reaching out to the churches and ask the churches if they want to do that. So that's the kind of thing that happens as a next step. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool. So we just did that. Woo, in our imagination, we just did that. Now we've done that, we have more of the notes because as a facilitator, we're taking notes, seeing who's responsible for what, we're all writing it all down, and we break off into the action steps. We decide what is priority, what's next, etc. And folks who take responsibility for whatnot in their different teams and so on and so forth. Because every organization and every makeup is different, from there it's a wildflower of how this thing goes. What I'd like to ask you to do now is for the folks who are standing, I would like you to be comfortable. So feel free to go back to your seats to have a seat where you are. But we want to debrief this actual process to talk about the tool and its usefulness with you. Yeah? So we have 8 minutes left to do that. So stay where you are, go back to your seat, whatever feels most comfortable. But this actual process, now we're going to step out of our solving the problems of Las Vegas and step into. Hey folks, I know you're coming in really quick. We still have like 5 minutes and we want to finish this last process up. We have until 12:30. I know, I'm sure someone sent you in, but we just want to give these folks some time to finish their process. Thank you so much. So really quickly, as you can see, folks are starting to attempt to enter into the space, but what we want to do is we really want to honor this time because you just received a new protocol. We want to debrief that. What was this process like for you? A few questions. So first thing, what did you notice in your experience using this technology? What really stood out to you about the tool and the protocol? Yes?
What's interesting is that it doesn't really allow you to, which is good. It doesn't really allow you to filter what you're saying or to quote unquote explain more clearly, because then that might introduce all kinds of confusion to the brain, so just like we do brainstorming.
Yeah.
Just write it down and process it there.
Okay, one of the notice things was brainstorming, writing it down, processing it later. We're asking for about 5 minutes because we have until 12:30. I know you all are eager to sit down, but if you can give us some time to finish this process, we would appreciate it. Thank you so much. What else?
It can be less intimidating for people to participate.
Yes, small groups make it less intimidating for people to participate. Large, small, we sort of do an accordion kind of a thing with that. Yes, yes.
It's easier to build on somebody else. It's like, I can't articulate very well, but when somebody says something, I'm like, there you go, and then I can explain more.
Boom, it is collaborative and iterative because you're working in community with one another. Yes, okay, I'm gonna move to another question so that all these lovely people can sit down and eat. They are hungry, all right? They're at the door. All right. The next question is, how did it make you feel? How did you feel in the actual process?
Productive.
Productive.
It's always
Hopeful.
Nice, it's always nice to be surrounded by people who are like-minded, and so when people come over to your table, you feel like, oh yeah, there are people.
All right, connected, validated, yes.
Heard.
Inspired, heard.
Every idea counts.
Every idea counts.
It's flexible.
Flexible. Super flexible. Last questions. What outstanding questions do you have? Yes.
How do they all fit together?
How do they all fit together? That's a good question. That's a really good question. In this hypothetical scenario, I don't have an answer. If I can say from experience, though, that the facilitator is usually like one of the greatest stakeholders in the process, and it is their job to put the puzzle pieces together, to do sort of cost-benefit analysis, pros and cons, about how to drive this thing forward, whether that's analyzing what the resources are, what the capacity is in terms of the presenting institution or organization. So we determine how it fits together once we sort of map out. Think of these as scenarios, right? If the charge is, we're gonna solve Las Vegas, Nevada's problems, right? You guys just created 7 scenarios, right? And the boss of Las Vegas, Nevada, looks at your scenarios and decides which 2 are feasible, right? So that's kind of how it works. Any other outstanding questions?
Are you available or someone available to do like a workshop in a place to teach a community or to teach?
Of course. We love that kind of thing. Okay, thank you all so much for your time. I know you're hungry.